What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk on the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast, a proud partner of the Eurostep Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your jubilant host, Numac, and joining me after what feels like forever, a Packers win, Jordan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It is finally good to talk about a Packers win that wasn't extending one of their best players. We're talking about a football game that they actually won.
They played the game and they won. And it
Yes.
was a joyous, joyous time. It was an ugly football game. Packers went over the Los
Yes.
Angeles Rams 20-3, featuring so many turnovers and some mind-boggling decisions and things like that. But it was a win nonetheless. 20-3, Packers win at Lambeau on a rainy day, which probably caused a lot of the messiness we saw throughout. So, I think first things first, we ought to just start with the defense, considering that three number stands out uh, quite heavily amongst the Packers' defensive performances as of late and throughout the season. By far, the lowest they've held an opponent to the entire year, in part thanks to the Rams starting Brett Ripien, former Denver Bronco, at quarterback in place of Matthew Stafford, who had a thumb injury, as well as the Rams not having any of their top rushers they've had throughout the year and being forced to start Daryl Henderson Jr., who was in a platoon with Royce Freeman the entire day. So, I guess first things first, Jordan, what did you think of the defense? I guess who stood out most for you?
Thankfully, we could talk about a lot of players. Um, I thought perhaps the most impactful, at least early on in terms of setting the tone, was Jonathan Owens. I thought he was very physical. We saw the strip sack, even with a bobbled snap that kind of put Ripien, running backwards already. Jonathan Owens has made a really good heads up play. And I just thought, for his limitations, considering the secondary was thin, no Rudy Ford going into this game, no Quay Walker, two guys that are equally physical and I don't their own distinctive sort of ways. Um, I just thought he kind of brought it really from the start and was making tackles, making plays to really stuff out a Rams offense that, as you mentioned, very toothless. We can't forget that part of it because without their starting quarterback and without their leading rusher on the season, it showed. But credit where credit is due, and he was making plays to start this game that really helped the defense kind of settle their feet, or settle in really quickly. And I thought it just kind of set the tone for the entire day.
Yeah, absolutely. He had the most tackles on the team according to PFF's box score with 8, including 5 solo tackles. You mentioned the strip sack and the forced fumble. Like, we had been dogging on Jonathan Owens, aka Mr. Simone Biles, for a few weeks now, but I'm just happy to see that the defensive players that we've been kind of ragging on against getting burnt against better teams at least showed up to task against the worst teams, right? Like, the Packers, I shouldn't say the Packers are a bad team, and I think today was evidence of that because they played pretty outstandingly against a worse team, talent wise at the moment. Like, I think full strength, the Rams are probably a little better than the Packers, even with Matthew Stafford's age. But with Brett Ripien not having made too many starts in his career, the rain, and not having a pretty strong run game, like, the Packers showed up, and Jonathan Owens was one of those players too that really rose to the task in a week when Rudy Ford was out, in a week where Quay Walker was out. Just a good positive result for the Packers today. Hopefully, in a way that they can start building off of the rest of the year. But I think another one of the bigger impact players was Carrington Valentine. Got picked on the last 2 weeks, just over and over again. Wasn't really getting a whole lot of love from us or any of the Packers, or any Packers fans, I should say. And was really all over Puka Nacua all day long. For the most part, I shouldn't say all day long, but I think he's on Puka sometimes, he's on Cooper Kupp sometimes. And
Tutu Atwell.
yeah, he was all over the place and played quite well, frankly. Trying to find his brief stats here: 2 tackles, But 3 pass deflections on the day for Carrington Valentine. Like that's really good. He had a couple where I thought it was like bang bang. He might have gotten there a tad early, but they didn't call it, so it's a positive play. And I think he was really excited to be playing at the level he was playing at today against those receivers because while the Rams are down their quarterback and a few of their running backs, the receivers were full of strength. Like Cooper
Yeah.
Kupp, Puka Nakua, and Tutu Atwell were all out there. And you could probably say that the quarterback play somewhat influenced how the receivers played. But when he was available, Carrington Valentine played pretty well and rose to the occasion to really, I guess, stunt any of those drives they're trying to put together. Because a few of those plays came on third down when they were really critical.
Yeah, I thought he, again, another guy that was pretty poised, playing physical right away, set the tone. You could tell he was really jazzed, making his second start, I guess. Um, and he was a guy that going into this game that he was my Packer player to watch in terms of this is a very strong receiving core. We knew that Stafford was at least a 50-50 shot, at least by the time they were recorded the preview pod, and pretty much it did. Maybe it was exaggerated how close he was to playing, but gamesmanship aside, the Rams certainly brought it down to the wire before news broke that Ripien was going to make the start. And I just thought you got to play against who you're playing against, or what's the quote? You play who's in front of you. That's the better way of saying it. And Carrington Valentine had tough challenges and rose to that challenge really well today. And a guy that they said that they want to see more of moving forward. Well, we're going to see a lot more of him, and hopefully it looks more like today than versus what we saw in the Broncos game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking at back at his plays, thanks to your studious notes here throughout the game, his first pass breakup was on 3rd and 9 on a pass intended for Tutu Atwell. Blew up a screen on the Rams' next drive, and then drew an OPI from Puka on an out route where he just shoved Valentine right out of the way to try and make the catch. So good defense there, and just or was the subject on the victim of a penalty, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah,
That set the Rams back even more. Right. Yeah, drew a penalty. Thank you. And then jumped another pass late in the fourth quarter with on 1st and 10. So like he was just all over the place, really, really doing well. So 7th round pick. We'll see how it goes for him the rest of the season. But if he can continue to step up with this type of receivers and maybe a little better quarterbacks, then maybe he turns into a serviceable player. But I think that'll obviously be a process thing that we'll see for the rest of the year as in his continued development.
yeah. And the other thing too is that like we talk about the secondary and just the Joe Barry of it all of utilizing the physicality that the corners bring, whether it's now Carrington Valentine or Jair or stuff like that. When you see it like today, and yes, game conditions weren't great. Second straight quarterback starting for the Rams. All that context aside, like we saw, like this team can really get under the skin of the opposing team, and I think that just there's ways that they can go about it better. Obviously, being a young team and channel it in a more focused way, and that just comes with time and experience and everything like that. Because penalties are always going to be an issue. But I do think today was more of like they just needed. It didn't feel manufactured. It wasn't. It what really was not in line or informed by the Packers scoring on the first drive or whatever. Like they deferred from the get go, and the defense be on the field to start the game really set the tone. And again, we can't forget why they limited the Rams to just 3 points and had their best defensive performance of the year. But still, I do think that does say something that it felt very organic rather than, hey, a touchdown is going to spring this up. It was like, no, we are going from the get go, especially after a very turbulent week where you lose a leader on that side of the ball. And it's all about who's going to step up. And we've already named a couple of guys that haven't stepped up all that much this
Hmm.
start the year, but moving forward, they can really step it up in hopefully a bigger way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned Jair's name. Had an okay game today. He had gotten beat on a few different plays, but ultimately had a pretty impactful play on a great zone read, um, where he followed Brett Rippion's eyes to get a big pass deflection that landed right in the where the ball ran right in the lap of Anthony Johnson Jr., who also played well today. I think we should add. Um,
Yes.
but I think, like you said, it just being an organic defensive effort, I think was pretty evident today. They were really good against the rush. We'll get to that in a little bit, but Brett Ripien, 13 of 28, 130 yards with one interception, and his longest was a 34-yard play to Cooper Kupp in like the second quarter, I think ish. And so I think through the first quarter and through that play in the second quarter that pass to Cooper Kupp, the Rams defense or offense only had 45 yards in the first quarter, which is huge for the Packers because I think the broadcast said in the first quarter the Rams are the fourth highest scoring offense in the NFL, but the
Yes.
Packers defense has only allowed 3 points on opening drives this year. So it's kind of like a one of those battles that really puts the test, which is the better unit. And today it was the Packers, despite the tampered expectations that the Rams offense I'm sure had, but it still made a big difference into how well they were going to shape up the rest of the game. But he only had the one reception, should have had two. He had a
Yes.
ball that landed right in Carrington Valentine's arms and just went right through it. I think that was late in the fourth quarter, mid fourth quarter, or something like that. It was pretty late in the game.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't. Was it the play that ended the game essentially? I'm pretty sure it was. It was like
I think that
it
was
was
their last offensive play.
Yeah, like the Rams' last offensive play.
Yeah.
Because I remember I saw Carrington Valentine like jumping up and down, hitting his head and whatnot. I saw everyone else like celebrating. I'm like, what happened? It's like, oh, it's the end of the game. Got it, got it, got it, got it. So, yeah, for all intents and purposes, a good effort by the secondary today. And what you said was a turbulent week, having lost Russell Douglas in that locker room. So glad to see everyone step up. Keisha Nixon, I think, played well today. He had,
Very well.
yeah,
Very
even
well. I
even
really liked this game.
yeah, even outside of his kick return that got nullified due to more penalties than I'd like to care to admit. Still, I think played quite well and was an impactful player. I think I'm trying to find his stats here, but
5 tackles, I
yeah,
see.
5 tackles, no PBUs or anything, but 5 tackles as a corner slot guy is pretty good.
Yeah. Trying to think of who else. Who else could we touch
You
on?
want to move to the rush?
Jair.
No, go ahead, go on, Don Jair.
Well, actually, my thought there was a kind of a good comment from kind of a good. There's a good comment during the game, to the broadcast, from Adam Amin, the play-by-play announcer, and he mentioned that Jair Alexander said like this is the best he's felt in a month, and it showed in terms of his play. He was just a lot more engaged. It wasn't, he was not that an effort problem is, you know,
Ever Jair's
we talk
problem.
about, yeah. Um, but we saw him just it was about making impactful plays over the course of the entire game rather than a couple here and there, one a drive or whatever.
Right.
I just thought as the game went along, we felt his presence again against a good wide receiver core, despite a second string quarterback that struggled a lot.
Right. No, absolutely.
Um, yeah.
Should we move on to the rush defense and linebackers because I think they played outstanding today.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Rams rushers held to a total of 68 rushing yards today on 26 attempts. It's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good.
Very good.
Like it seemed like early that they were going to have some momentum in the running game. I think I had in my notes that Daryl Henderson started the game off with with 5 yards on the first carry, got 6 more yards on a second carry, then 3 more. Like the first drive felt like a lot of Daryl Henderson Jr. and
Yeah.
just looked like they were going to have some pretty good success in the running game. And if it wasn't for rain and the cleats of Ben Skoranek on that first drive on 3rd and inches on the end around, they probably
Yeah.
get that first down and continue the drive. But Packers get a break there, and the Rams end up punting it, and that was kind of the end of any sort of momentum the Rams had in the rushing game all day long. But they made the adjustments, and I think it goes to credit a lot of that front four, particularly Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, and Kenny Clark, in stopping the run. I saw a lot of plays where TJ Slayton was shedding blocks and plugging up holes, but I thought him and Devontae Wyatt played pretty well complementary like D line football today, if you can like say it's a thing. But there was a couple
Mhm.
plays where Slayton would shed a block and make the runner go to a different hole, and Devontae Wyatt was right there to wrap him up. Like, they're making progress as a rushing defensive team, I think, at least this week against a dilapidated running back room. But for all intents and purposes, I thought they played well against the run today. And I'm trying to see if Devontae Wyatt had too many tackles. Looks like he didn't register one, but I just saw him all over the rushing game today.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kenny Clark. I mean, he goes down early,
Yeah,
so
with a shoulder injury.
with a shoulder injury, which is a big blow, and especially at that time of the game, Packers had already scored, but
Yep.
you know we're still in a very precarious state, even with that said. And I just thought between Sladen, Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, all of those guys on the line made plays at various points in the game. And yeah, and again, not the Rams' leading rusher out there, but guys that can make plays, can rattle off plays, even if they're not as talented as Kyron Williams. Last week we saw them quiet a Vikings off running offense that is not that great and not productive by its own right, but still, like, again, you play against who's in front of you, and Packers' run defense is really good, especially given that the conditions of the game forced it to be a more of a an old school game kind of in that way, where whoever's going to run the ball better is could probably give the team out on top. And yeah, the Packers did their job and quieted the Rams to very. I mean, when are we talking about the Packers allowing 3.4 yards per play to their opponents? It's
That's
not many.
no, not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot.
Not a
Not a
whole
whole lot
lot.
at all.
Um, I'm really excited to see Carl Brooks start playing some more. Carl Brooks enters after Kenny Clark goes down, and he had a wonderful game, like a
Yes.
truly wonderful game. Pulling up his stats here. Only one tackle, but had two huge pass deflections and was a menace. Like, I think all around. His
Yeah.
box score didn't really speak to how well he played. He had those two big pass deflections. One came on, I think, a critical 3rd down before the Packers had pulled away. I think it was still like 10-3 at that point. But he's a guy who we've seen in the last few weeks really start to make some progress on just developing into a pretty good interior defensive lineman. He's all over the place. He's getting in on pressures some weeks. Like, I think it was a couple weeks ago, he had a sack or two. Now this week he's doing better in the past game, but also just being a good run defender as well. Spoiler alert, he might be up for a cheese this week, depending on
We
depending
have a
on
lot of
how those grades
debate for
shake out.
cheeses this week.
Yeah,
Thank God.
it's gonna be a tough one to do, but that's just fine. Haven't had that problem in a good way since the Bears game.
Ugh. Not to go off your train of thought.
Nope, you're
Can
good.
you name the last team the Packers forced under 200 total yards? This
Um,
happened last year, so not,
yeah,
of course, not
I'm
this
just
year.
trying to think of like the bad team we played against last year. Was it the Vikings in like week 17?
No,
Let me give like one more guess. Cause I don't want to.
you're in that. You're in the right range of when
Is
this
it
game happened.
the Dolphins game?
No,
Okay, you gotta tell
game
me.
before the Dolphins game.
Damn it!
It's when they hosted the Los Angeles Rams.
Oh, that would make
100,
sense.
the Baker Mayfield start.
Yeah. Yep.
156 yards of uh offense for the Rams that game, and then 187 today. LaFleur, I believe, is 4-0 against Sean McVay.
I believe
I
he
think that's
is.
he's got his number, including that's a playoff win within that number
Yeah, I think
too.
that's the second one. I think is the playoff win.
Joe
Um,
Barry. Joe Barry knows Sean McVay.
I
That
mean,
is true. He
he
does.
does. They he was his I think linebackers coach for a while, so it would make sense that he knows that offense pretty well. And hey, so be it. That's what it takes. Maybe Joe Barry should put that much research into other offenses that he's going to face, but whatever. Trying to think of anybody else on the defense that we should talk about that we haven't already. No Quay Walker today. Big part of their linebacking core not around. I think their play caller, if I'm not mistaken, when Devondre Campbell's out, might even be the green dot now.
Yeah.
But him being out allowed for JJ Enagbare and Kingsley. I'm sorry, JJ Enagbare and Isaiah McDuffie to have some good games today. Like Enagbare had I believe, a pass deflection and a big run stop. McDuffie was around, not like he was invisible, but he was just around. Overall, I think you said it pre-pod, one of the better games linebacking core has had in a while.
Yes. Yeah. I was very worried not having Quay in. He popped up late on the injury report, I believe on Friday with a groin injury. He didn't practice. So I was like, well, that doesn't feel good. Rudy Ford, the same thing. I think popped up on Thursday's um, injury report when we recorded, and then we saw Ennis Gaines get elevated. So I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
down another starter. And you mentioned it, having Devontae Campbell really quarterback the defense helped a lot. McDuffie, he's been pretty good this year. Like he's not like a it's not like an all pro level kind of guy, but like that's a guy that, in terms of late draft picks that the Packers have taken recently, we've seen steady progress from him in a
Mm-hmm.
very real way. And it's good to see it show in a win like this. And just making plays like you kind of like I don't think you intended for it to be like dismissive, but he like it is true. Like it's like, oh, Isaiah McDuffie's in the middle of this. Isaiah
Yeah.
McDuffie's in the middle of this play. Like he does just have like a good nose for the ball, and I think the more reps he's gained over the last 2 years, especially between Campbell missing time, Quay getting injected in games last year, and now missing time today, I think he's just kind of steadily gone along in a very good way of just like even if you're down a top player within your defense, within your linebacking core at that, he's a good rotation linebacker to have in there,
Yeah.
and just making plays is going to keep getting some more reps for him.
Yeah, I think that's you said it earlier in your point, but Isaiah McDuffie being in the middle of plays is like kind of his calling card. He's kind of always around, and as a linebacker, that's kind of your job, just to be
Yeah,
around in plays and putting your nose to the ball on tackles. But I mean, for what it's worth, that really is what he does. He's always around, whether it's in the backfield or in tackles. He's around, and that's a good piece to have, as long as he's not out there in coverage in the slot once in a while.
yeah,
Then it gets a little testy. But if he's doing what his normal positional job is asking him to do, he's, like you said, a pretty good rotational piece to have on that side of the ball. Not too much in the order of the edge rushers today. Nothing from Preston. Nothing from Rashawn Gary. Like Rashawn Gary got
he would
uh,
have had a sack if he wasn't offsides.
well, you could argue that was partially why he had this, partially the reason he had the
Yeah,
sack.
of course.
He
Yeah,
got penalized for, I believe it was a face mask on a sack.
based on Ripien, I believe, fumbled the ball, so he was already kind of in a very just um, weird position for Rashawn, who's barreling down to get him and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, it was just an interesting day for both the edge rushers. No one really got home, but I think it was interesting to see Rashawn Gary line up in a few different spots throughout the game. I saw him on both sides of the ball early in the game, and then I think it was like the third quarter.
There was like a third down blitz where he's like down the middle.
He was
I
down
was
the
like,
middle. That's what I was
oh,
gonna say. I was like, who in the f? who's lining up over the nose tackle? Who's that there? And then play goes, and I see that 52 flash, and I was like, oh, we're getting Rashawn Gary up the middle.
We saw some, and there. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. That might have been the same play that they did a 5-man blitz too. Like Packers, I mean, they don't really change it up a lot in terms of
Yeah,
pressure and dialing it up that way. But like
no, not ever really.
the moments that they do, it's like, oh, let's see more of it. Like I think today, especially as the game went along, and even if it was a one score game, the Packers were in control. Um, in a box score sense, I just thought that defense just like realized, we can get to Brett
We can get
Rippon.
home. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I think it was after that first drive, like, oh, we can start teeing off and not have to worry about it.
and I don't think we mentioned it on the pod yet, but Rob Havenstein did not play today. They're
Nope.
probably their best lineman, right tackle too. So, that again, teeing off without another integral member of the Rams offense helped this defense really just control the game, dial up the pressure in meaningful ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hopefully we see more of it. Hopefully we see more of
Yes.
it. Um, Kenny Clark is feared to not, or not feared. Let me back up. It's good news. Andy Herman reports that not a long term concern for Kenny Clark. So, good news there. Saw the cart come out, which was scary, but it being a shoulder
Yes.
injury, they probably just don't want to have him walk on slippery surfaces all the way to the locker room. Plus, he's a big guy. Like, let's just give him a ride kind of thing. And so, good news there. Hopefully, he can come back next week, if not the week after.
Yeah.
Anything else on the defense, Jordan, or should we move on to the offense?
No, I think it's time to dig into. Actually, I will. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Lucas Van Ness. Very intrigued by him.
Yeah.
He
What
doesn't.
what for?
His snaps. I just think he kind of is getting in that Rashawn mold of like he may not get home, but he's pressuring um in the snaps that he gets, and I thought he's been pretty good in terms of run defense. Like there was a play, maybe I'm misremembering if it was him or not, but I believe there was a play where Royce Freeman had to like bounce outside because Lucas Van Ness um just broke through and forced him to go outside. It was like a big tackle for a loss. Just think he's been we're not talking about him a lot because just of the guys that are ahead of him.
Yeah.
But I think quietly having a fine rookie year in terms of given his role and just what we're seeing in limited snaps so far.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a development project for Lucas Van Ness, having come out of Iowa and coming out of Iowa in a limited role as to what his impact was on that defense, just given how Iowa ran their defense in years, prioritizing seniority over talent. But has two tackles today, one of which was a tackle for a loss. And I think you're right. He is in the similar vein of Isaiah McDuffie, where you're kind of like, there's Lucas Van Ness again in the middle of a play or in the middle of a blowing up a play. Isn't
Hmm.
doing it as often as McDuffie is, but I feel like there's at least a few snaps a game where he really is just in the middle of a play being blown up thanks to his pressure. And so
Yeah.
give him time, and I think he'll start to get home similar to how Rashawn did, but just understanding scheme a lot better, as well as getting control of how far to push up on a rush. I think that's one of his main issues right now, is he breaks contain on his rush pretty often, to where
Yeah.
quarterbacks are allowed to step up easy and scramble if they can. But I'm with you. He's intriguing.
Very intriguing.
He'll be a player to watch for sure for the rest of the next 9 games or so. So, all right, let's move on to the offense. Put up 20 points today through trials and tribulations of rainy Lambeau Field. I guess we probably should talk the quarterback first, so we don't do but Eurostep and 1-6 with not talking about Giannis first. Jordan Love, 20 of 26, 228 yards and a touchdown. He did take 4 quote unquote sacks. I think a lot of those were just tackles behind the line of scrimmage versus a literal in the pocket sack. I thought he looked good today. I think this is his best game he's looked in a while, probably since the Saints game, frankly, which was their last win. But like, I think without a doubt, that's the best he's looked since then. He hadn't looked great in any of the losses in these last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, um, I think the bloom of we're well past the kid gloves of it all in terms of just wanting Jordan Love to be good and just evaluating where he is at. A game like today kind of reinforces some of the few bad things that he showed today, kind of reinforces where he's at. But I thought in terms of game managing, making plays, his throws weren't perfect today, but some of that could be certainly attributed to the conditions. Um, at the same time, we saw him uncork deep balls. Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, I think. I might be misremembering. Anyway.
I'm double
There's
checking receiving. Luke Musgrave had a long of 25.
Musgrave. That was
Wicks
yes,
had one of 18. Watson of 37. Dobbs of 17. Aaron Jones of 13. So
yeah. I thought again when you're seeing him connect with wide receivers in ways that he hadn't been doing much of this year at all, that is improvement, no doubt about that. I thought it was also helped by the fact that when Matt LaFleur said, "Oh, we're going to turn Aaron Jones loose," and everybody goes, "Grown." We've heard you say this multiple times, yada yada yada, and him actually living up to that, and Aaron Jones being the engine of establishing a run game for Jordan Love to play off of, and getting play action, screens, stuff like that. That like that's what you do with a quarterback that is clearly developing like Jordan Love. And again, it was not a perfect game by any means, but to your point, it's certainly the most consistency we have seen of him since that Saints game in that second half of, you know, given the circumstances of coming back from that game to win. I just thought there was a level of more control and consistency that we've seen from Jordan Love that we just wanted to see. And when you go 20 to 26, a guy that has accuracy issues too, you're probably going to win the NFL, or you're probably going to win an NFL game.
yeah.
So that much is clear.
Longest attempt was the almost 40-yarder to Christian Watson that was underthrown. But a lot of his throws were to the outside, nothing really over the middle. You and I talked pre-pod about 4 passes over the middle of what you would traditionally call over the middle. But a lot of it was outside, and I think it came as a result of getting the ball out of his hands quicker, which is what we really were trying to have happen a lot lately.
Yes.
And the deep ball to Christian Watson that should have been caught in the end zone. I shouldn't say shouldn't have been caught or should have been caught, but the deep ball that should have been a touchdown to Christian Watson. Bad throw. He said he was frustrated about it post game, but then comes back and uncorks a 37-yarder to him on the other side of the ball in the third quarter, I believe it was, maybe the early fourth. But I think other than that, a lot of the receivers played well today in terms of catching the ball. Luke Musgrave still needs to learn how to run and chew gum at the same time. That is, learn how to catch the ball and get some yards after catch. But he did it on his touchdown pass up the middle on a beautiful play design.
Yes.
Dontavian Wicks had a good day sans his fumble. Like, I think that fumble isn't necessarily an indictment on his ability, more so just a rookie mistake in that I believe it was first down.
It
Like,
was a first down, him trying to
to
extend out
to get
the
another
first down.
first down. And so
Yeah.
it's just one of those plays where as a football player you did the right thing in trying to get the first down, but knowing situation and knowing time and place to do that is probably more critical, and that it's more important to catch the ball and just get those 9 yards and try and extend for the extra yard on a first down out of the half. So
Yeah.
that was one of the bigger, or was sorry, Keyshawn Nixon's kick return earlier wasn't nullified from a penalty. It
It was the
was
Wicks.
the Wicks
Yes.
fumble that nullified the field position. So my apologies on that if you yelled at me earlier in your car or in your living room for my mistake. But same thing, like Aaron Jones had a fumble today. I think he had maybe I thought he had two, but I might be wrong. I thought there was three fumbles today, and they might have recovered one, but I think there for sure was two, and it's
You're
just
correct. He had two.
yeah, and I think he had gotten back on top of one.
Yep.
But when Wicks fumbled on this off the sideline there, you saw Romeo Dobbs and Aaron Jones come over and comfort him and really talk him through what it means to get over those mistakes. And then Aaron Jones wanted him to make sure he didn't go feel too bad, went and fumbled on his own the next drive. And I think that was kind of it was a big example of how this Packers season has gone because they came out of halftime up 10-3, I believe,
Yes.
and so they were ready to go big. Go ahead.
No, you're right. It was 7-3
Yeah, seventh.
because Carlson missed the field goal
Yep.
going into the half.
Yep. So 7-3 coming out of the half. They get a big boost from Keyshawn Nixon's kick return fumble. And that's like, oh, okay, fine. Defense comes up with a big stop. I believe makes them punt on that specific drive. And then ensuing drive, Packers are moving again. They've got a lot of good momentum. Wish I could find this play pretty quickly. But they were running the ball like super well, and then the fumble from Aaron Jones really just nullified it. Packers, yeah, they start their own 16, 2nd and 5. Holding wiped out a good run that Dylan had, so it's 3rd and 12. Aaron Jones gets a screen pass, gets a first down. They're moving, and then on 1st and 10 was that Jones fumble, but it came after like a 8-9 yard run. Like they were really having positive plays. Just the penalty knocked him back, but they ended up converting anyways. And so to start the second half, they just had so much momentum that they wanted to keep carrying and keep going to put this game away, and they just kept getting in their own way. The Dontavian Wicks stretch for yards, and then the fumble where it hits the ground, it bounces straight up, and the guy just is standing there barely in bounds and steps out. It's like, ugh,
Yeah,
damn
like
it.
that will net like if you do that play like 1,000 times,
That
what are
scenario
the odds
doesn't
that happens
happen.
again?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, to your point, I mean, I think overall the offense we saw a lot more positivity. Obviously, that's helped by Jordan Love completing passes. 8 different wide receivers got catch today.
Yep.
Should have been 9 because Malik Heath is an underthrown ball, but Malik Heath was like wide open, and it would have just been at least a first down. But the Aaron Jones of it all, of just having someone to kind of be the engine, not forgetting that he's out there. Obviously, helped that he's probably like Jair, probably the most healthy he's been in quite some time. There's a great stat on the broadcast that he had. What did he finish with? He finished with
20 carries.
20 carries exactly.
Most since, I believe,
Week 10
week 10
of
last
last
year.
year.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because during that late season run, you would have thought, oh yeah, Aaron Jones was at least probably hit 20 in one of those games.
Right.
And it's a very, that's a high number. He could have been 19 or whatever.
Yeah.
But how we talked about Aaron Jones last year certainly applied to this year in terms of give him the ball. He is your offense. He'll make it go when the passing game is not clicking the way that they have wanted. Yeah, I thought like outside of those fumbles, the offense, another stat to share. 5.7 yards, 5.75 yards per play today. That is the highest since the Eagles lost last year in Philadelphia, where they had
Wow.
6.98 yards per play.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think a lot of people in the Discord, brief interruption, join the Discord, GSP.info. We have a lot of fun in there. I think it was Kelp and a couple other people is asking for 30 carries from Jones. and I was about it. He got 24 touches today, 26 if he catches all of his targets. So I think it's pretty evident that this offense looks a lot different when you involve its best player. Like
Yes.
it's just he is the the bread and butter of this offense, and it's clear that he's just such a better running back than what we even think he is. And I'm not saying AJ Dillon's a bad running back. He had a good day today too.
He did.
But
It
for all intents and purposes, he just like it just looks so much better when Aaron Jones has the ball in his hands. Maybe it's just because he's so much like twitchier and quicker than AJ Dillon is, but anytime I see Aaron Jones getting the ball, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, man, he's gonna make a move and bust it for a run.
yeah, it's not. I hate to be a broken record about just it's not anything new that any Packers fan doesn't. If there's a Packers fan that thinks otherwise, that Aaron Jones shouldn't be a fixture or the fixture in their offense, it's like that we're not watching the same thing. You know what I mean? And yeah, I just thought he you just see it in a very palpable way, and it's not like it's a very different way of like seeing like when we had or when the Packers had Devontae Adams and just seeing how the field tilts his way. You see that with Aaron Jones, but he does a very different like plug and play where it's like you can see it in the backfield. You could see it with no like a very heavy jumbo formation, or you're spreading it out, you're setting him out wide. There's just so many different ways where he can make plays and just be the safety valve in a lot of ways of just, handing him the ball or throwing screen passes to him and him making just plays after, the catch. I just think there's just some it's hard to have someone as versatile as him. And AJ Dillon has been getting better as the season has gone along, but it's just not it's not the same. It's just not the same very clearly, and it's it's not a knock on AJ Dillon. We're just talking about a very different skill set than Aaron Jones, and quite honestly, very few running backs in this league possess, because it's not one of one, but it's at least in a very elite way.
Yeah, I love watching him run. I think he reminds me of Tyreek Hill when they run because they both use their non-ball hand as a counterweight to their balance. It's
Yes.
really funny to watch. Like you see him going, and you start seeing him just whip this hand around, going real fast as they try to make sure they don't get too far over their skis and lose their balance. But helps them cut and just be those dynamic runners that they really are. So obviously Aaron Jones not as fast as Tyreek Hill, but still does his best to make off break plays and break off big plays. And yeah, I just think for what it's worth, I don't think it's a mistake. Even like because the Rams defense wasn't bad. They're missing some players, but they weren't like bad. Aaron Donald was
They're
was
making
Aaron
I
Donald
was
was making some hay today. He was scary. He had stopped an Aaron Jones rush that would have been a first down because he had put his big arm out and just stopped him in his tracks. Like
Yep.
for what like I don't think it's wrong to dismiss that Jordan Love's best game came on a day where Aaron Jones had his most activity since the Bears game. Like
Yes.
I
That
think
is the best way to put it.
yeah, I think that those two are pretty tied to each other as it comes to talking about the game. Like it's just if Aaron Jones is going to be out there getting 25 touches during the game, I would imagine that Jordan Love is going to have time to throw the ball. They have to respect him throwing the ball on play action and things like that. So yeah, if they can keep this up and if Aaron Jones can stay healthy the rest of the year, this might be what ends up being the game that starts real progression in all of these players' development. Like I don't want to put that load on Aaron Jones being healthy, but they just looked so much better as an offense today with him there.
Yes, agreed. And smaller of thing of note, but very important in this all the same. Yash Ivan started today, left again like he did last week. Shea Walker filled in, resuming his starting position that was for David Bakhtiari. Sean Ryan got some run today for John Runyon. We saw a lot of some controversial plays in terms of offsides, neutral
Yeah,
zone infractions, whatever.
I think the NFL is getting way too technical with how they're trying to negate the brotherly shove or the tush push, which name you want to call it. But I didn't see a single down the line angle that showed John Runyon Jr. offsides on either of those plays. The first one was improperly attributed to Rasheed Walker, who was not in the neutral zone when the
Yes.
ball was snapped. It was John Runyon Jr. both times, so that could have been the closest to it. And both times, I'm pretty sure he wasn't there. And
Yeah.
it's I think it's the the NFL really trying to nip this trend in the bud for reasons unbeknownst to me. Like, I think it's kind of dumb that they're going to these lengths to calling it pretty much wrong in most of these cases. I think that happened last week too with the Packers. So it was just a tough day for the refs on that side.
Yes. And yeah, I just thought again that it to your point of Jordan Love's success is tied to Aaron Jones' success. I just thought we saw the run game look a lot smoother, in part because the offensive line, even with Aaron Donald making menacing plays in the second half, especially, um, I just thought there was a lot of good things that happened on whether, Josh, I'm playing the best football of my life, Myers making key blocks on the field, Walker filling in for Nyman, Ellen Jenkins just being the steady constant, really. Yeah, I mean, like there's just a lot of things that we could glean from that, even despite, as you mentioned, 4 sacks for Jordan Love, which some kind of had caveats of like how many yards did he lose and yada yada yada.
Yeah, I think like a lot of them came on scrambles that weren't crossing the line of scrimmage. I know for sure one of them was.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the line was kind of shuffled around today, like you were saying, but Elton being good, Zach Tom played well today. I think it was just sort of mixing and matching. Like, I think Sean Ryan came in because of a brief injury to John Runyon Jr. And then I don't really know why Yash started and Rasheed Walker came in. I don't really think they ever really talked about that. So should we get to the? Oh no! Before we move on to receivers, and it's like their game in general. My king, Emmanuel Wilson, 4 rushes for 43 yards. I'm gonna go on a soapbox for a minute here, just 1 minute. I love what I'm seeing from him when he's on the field. I think his vision as to when to go away from holes that maybe plugged or bounce it outside or bounce it back inside an outside run is fantastic. He had a couple of runs today. He had 4 of them. And I think on 2 of them for sure. One of them he was meant to go outside the tight ends and people blocking out there towards to get him off the edge towards the left. And he bounces it back up inside for a pretty decent gain. Like, knowing that he can't outrun that outside, great vision, bounces up inside, positive yardage. And then he had a 31-yard break-off run off the right end that was just an absolute beauty of a run. Outran a few of the different Rams players. I just am really excited to see what he can bring after a full year of development and playing some NFL snaps. That was 1 minute and 3 seconds. So ends my spiel.
There's something there. There's something there.
There's something there. That's all I'm saying. Again, not a bad defense. The Rams defense.
No.
Like, we can talk all day long about how the Packers defense played against the Rams offense, but like I'm happy with how the offense played against the Rams defense. So, including my young son Emmanuel Wilson. That being said, we should talk about the receivers and talk about their games today, as well as just how they helped Jordan Love succeed.
Yeah.
I think they just played so much better in their route running and not having drops. I think I saw like 1 drop today from the receivers. I forget who it was, but I think for all intents and purposes, great routes.
Maybe Musgrave?
It might have been Musgrave. But there was a play, I think it was in the second quarter, where there was an out route by Romeo Dobbs on the right hand side of the field where they needed to get a first down. I think it was like 3rd and 12 or something. And it was a long third down. And Love throws a great pass right in the Dobbs hands. And then we talked a lot about like Romeo Dobbs having some stone hands sometimes. Like that one, it was just like the ball literally stopped in his mitts. And it's just like, man, like that's what we need to see from Romeo Dobbs. We need to see him having sure hands to catch these balls from Love, who is the favorite target of his. Like Jordan Love and Romeo Dobbs have that connection that you would want any good QB receiver duo to have. Like that's the connection right now. And if he can continue to have games like today and not games like last week, then I think it'll be a really good sign for the Packers moving forward. Christian Watson made a glass. Looks like they avoided a concussion with Christian Watson, but on that 37-yard catch, he gets up and celebrates, and then he realizes he's kind of hurting and gets back down. I think he had a back, a rib, and a possible concussion injury when they said he was out for the rest of the game. It's just like, golly, man.
Yeah, and went to the locker room near the end of it too. So
He looked like he was in
enough
good,
to,
yeah, he looked like he was in good spirits as he was like running down the sideline, but just like, golly, I just wish you were a little healthier.
yeah. Luke Musgrave scored his first NFL touchdown.
Yep.
Congrats
That play
to
design
the.
was beautiful. Like, I
It was
think,
a really it. I will say it looks good knowing now, but at the time of when it's starting, because we've seen a lot of screens where Jordan Love is looking the other way and is throwing off his back foot to throw it the opposite direction.
right.
And I'm just like, oh no. Like I'm just seeing this evolve and I'm like, this is recipe for disaster. We've seen this play multiple times. And then just the brilliant heads up kind of like Luke Musgrave kind of does the classic like little Madden like I'm gonna do a little
Yeah.
here's a little block and then do my route and wide open
Yep.
daylight 20 yards touchdown. It was and again that was the to cap the game because as much as it was still in the Packers control like you just needed to kind of put the period or the exclamation point on a win
Yeah.
after all this time.
Yeah. 13-3 at that point in the game. The uh, big touchdown from the Packers puts about 23 that ends the game. But yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Watching the play develop, it's like, oh, what is he doing? Why didn't he throw that ball? Oh, why is he going back the other way? Oh, it's Luke Musgrave. He's wide open touchdown. Like, it was that roller coaster of emotion of wondering what the hell we're doing. But I think before we get back into the receivers, I want to talk about play calling a little bit. I thought it was really good today. Like, I thought Matt LaFleur called a wonderful game offensively. And just, there weren't a lot of plays where I was wondering what they were doing at all. Like, there were some execution plays where I was like, from players, like, okay, we got to be a little better. But I saw the vision of what they were trying to do, and it all made sense. Like, it didn't look hard today, Jordan. It looked good. And that
Yes.
was the biggest thing. It didn't look like we were just like trying to trudge through mud to run the ball or trying to throw into 50 mile per hour oncoming winds to complete a pass. It just, everything flowed today. Like, it was just a nice, easy pace, and they did well to advance the ball on pretty much every drive. I'm not really sure. Do they have a 3-and-out today? I don't. It did. I'm
Um,
not. I don't. It's gonna take a while to check, so I'm not actually gonna go back and check.
yes,
But they did have a 3-and-out.
I think they did.
I don't know if they did, but regardless, I don't. They didn't have a lot of them because I didn't
They did
get.
not.
I didn't get
They
mad
had
at
a
the
first
whole.
half touchdown too.
Right. Like they just played well and sustained drives to keep um their defense off the field when they needed to. And I think that's the biggest thing is that we had a whole discussion last week about how it's hard to keep your defense on the field for as long as they do and win football games like that. And then look what happens
Yeah.
this week. They have multiple drives that were sustained for like a long time, and um, from there they just end up having a much better game. I'm gonna go through these because I haven't found one yet, They had a couple where they got a first down and then proceeded to go like and lose and not get the first down, like not a 3-and-out, but a 4-and-out, I guess we'll say. But
Yeah.
I'm looking now, and as of right now, I'm not finding it through the second quarter.
Um, yeah, I agree with you. I think again, one, it's Aaron Jones. From the get-go, he was involved in the offense. We've seen it before, but it sustained itself in a very real way and getting on the board with a touchdown in the first half, ending that terrible, 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 terrible drought. Helped a lot. And I just thought there was just a focus and the things that people would have problems with in terms of the offensive performance was just stuff that like it's execution stuff. It's you're not going into a game expecting to have three fumbles, but when it's really slippery out there and it's rainy, we saw of not to it wasn't because someone missed a route or anything like that, but like we saw Romeo Dobbs in the red zone slip on a route and it changed, you know, it led to Aaron Donald sacking Jordan Love. Like stuff like that happened, but it wasn't like it didn't feel like the Packers got in their own way like it had been the last 4 to 5 weeks of like,
Yeah.
no, you're doing things that are limiting what you can do further and just setting yourself back and back and back. I just thought, as you mentioned, just the way that LaFleur built this game plan around Aaron Jones to help supplement Jordan Love kind of just kept them buoyed. And eventually it paid off with, scoring 20 points and, obviously the defense helping too and getting off the field in a very timely manner as the game went along too.
Um, Three things. One 3-and-out at the beginning of the fourth quarter. That was the only one.
Good.
Penalties, I think, were a big thing that bit them again today. 8 penalties for 57 yards. Got to clean them up. Like I know that two of them.
And a lot of those were the
Yeah.
on offense.
Yep. Two of those on offense, or three for sure on offense. I think there was a holding, and then two of the John Runyon Jr. ones.
Mhm.
But more on special teams again. Like that just can't happen anymore. It's Rich Bisaccia needs to get his act together and start coaching these guys to not have penalties on special teams. But then another big thing we talked about it just again, time of possession. Packers had the ball for 35 minutes of this game. Like I don't think the Packers had the ball that much in like any of their games this year.
That is correct. That is the most that they've had time of possession in any game this year.
Like that's good. Look what happens when you use Aaron Jones is you can run the ball effectively. And so I think that like you said, I'm totally with you. Like we've been hard on Matt LaFleur and talked about his seat maybe getting a little hot. I think
Hot
this
piss.
yes, he needed some hot piss from the team. But yeah, he coached really well and coached in a way that played to the team's strengths. Like I'm looking at next gen stats for Jordan Love's breakdown of his passing chart throughout the day. And he had, let's see, two throws completed within the line of scrimmage to the 5 yard marker. The majority of his passes came between 5 and 15 yards or 5 and 20 yards.
Hmm.
Like that's where we've been saying is his strong suit. If receivers can get separation, he can throw balls in that range quite accurately, I might add. He was just on the money today with those intermediate ranged throws. Had a few that were behind the line of scrimmage that were like touch passes or anything like that, little dump offs. But yeah, he went 2 for 3 on balls past 20 yards, and then went. I'm gonna trying to do quick math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 10 to 12 between 5 and 20 yards. Like that's good. That moves the chains when you have an effective run game like they were doing today.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
That Tavion Wicks big breakout game for him. I think he really showed his ability. Like I think he's developing quite nicely. I won't say
Yes.
like breakout game because he didn't have like 100 yards and a touchdown or anything, but he had a catch on the first drive that was like
Third
oh
down too.
yeah like oh Dontavian Wicks on the first drive. Is that what we're doing today? And it kind of was what we were doing today. So yeah, keep getting him involved. He's good, and I think like honestly, this way of winning today and how like the offense was ran should be how they just run the offense now till the end of the season. Like this is what we've been calling for.
Yeah,
Supplement Jordan Love's development with the steadiness that is Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon.
yeah. It sounds very simple. It's hard to execute when uh games are being played, and you're not going to face a offense like the Rams had today every week. But I just felt very I didn't feel this level of like doom and gloom like I had
No,
felt the last couple of weeks. I felt a lot of things were just very easy rather than it being really hard.
right, exactly. Like there wasn't balance in the play calling, and that was good. They had 38 rushes, for and then 20 passes. Or I'm sorry, yeah, or I'm sorry, 26 passes. My apologies, but that's fine when it works, right? Like this is a good thing to have happen if you're getting 20 points and Sands for a couple of fumbles. They probably should have had more today and a couple of missed field goals. Like they left a lot of points on the field through mistakes in fumbling and Anders Carlson missing a field goal. But other than that, they played well. Jordan Love was hitting receivers, he was hitting tight ends. The play calling worked out really well. It's just this is the type of offense the Packers should run to really find success. Run first, supplement it with Jordan Love passes and play action, and see where it gets you. Once you get away from that and you turn into a pass first team like they've been without Aaron Jones, that's where it gets really tough, and you can see how it gets tough, evidenced by their last 4 games before this one.
21 first downs today, tied for the most this season since the Saints game. Also, what was it? 7 14 on third downs today. Um, the highest third down efficiency that they've had since the Bears game.
Yeah, like that's
That boosts your time of possession and your play calls and all that stuff because again, it keeps your defense off the field. You manage the game in a very different way. And yes, did things go against them with fumbles? Anders Carlson missed a field goal. Otherwise, I thought he did very well, kicking in not ideal conditions by any means.
mhm.
By any means, his first kind of taste of what it's going to be like in Lambeau in November, December, and
Yeah,
January. But that to me is like that. That's how I think of a Matt LaFleur coach Packers game and how he wants to play. Is
yeah,
that it's a really run heavy way of things, and then make the big plays with your passes and stuff like that, and then eventually just dictate the game the way that you want to.
yep, yep. That's all it is.
Write
It's
this recipe down, Matt LaFleur. God darn it.
anything else, Jordan? Anything else want to talk about? I think we kind of covered it all.
Yeah, I think again.
Sorry. Jaden Reed's end around. We saw
Oh
that in training camp,
yes,
and this was like the first time they pulled out that it really worked out well. He's gonna be something. I think he's gonna be something good. It just is a matter of time, which is a lot of
yeah,
what this year is going to be. But
yep.
I don't think he had. I don't remember seeing him too much in the passing game, like catching balls. 3 of 19 or 3 catches for 19 yards, plus the big
End
run,
around.
the big run. So overall, almost 40-yard day or I'm sorry, 50-yard day for him. So
Yeah,
for all intents and purposes, he's developing, and I think that's a lot of what this is. Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Romeo Dobbs, Dante Wicks, they're all developing, and the longer they
yep.
play, and it'll be tough moving forward. Like you're not going to play the Rams every week, but we are like next week play the Steelers in Pittsburgh. That'll be a tough game. Steelers defense is hard, is good.
Yes.
So it'll be tough, but if you can, it's not like the Rams defense is any better or worse than the Steelers. I think the Steelers is talented. They, for one TJ Watt, they had one Aaron Donald. Like I think there's similar pieces around the Steelers that the Packers had to deal with this week against the Rams, but moving forward, when you face the Steelers, the Chargers, the Lions, and the Chiefs these next 4 games, it might look a little bad again, but I, as long as it looks similar to this, then I think we have room for optimism, right? I'm fine if the defense gets kind of torched by the Lions or gets kind of torched by the Chiefs. It's kind of the nature of playing
Yeah,
those
it's what you
those good
expect,
teams,
really.
right? And so, but if the offense looks similar, like I'm fine with the defense looking a little lackluster with it how it is. Like I'm just fine with that against those teams because the secondary is that bad. But if the offense looks like how it looks this week, that'll be pretty good room for some optimism.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, you mentioned next week is not going to be easy. Steelers, they're, yeah, we'll save that for the next pod. But for right now, it's good to see just a win. I just wanted to see a
It
win.
feels good to talk about a win. It feels
Yeah.
really good to talk about a win.
Yeah.
Like it was getting tough there to keep harping on the bad things, right? We got to talk some good things this week. We got to talk a
Yeah.
win.
Hmm.
Perfect. All right, Jordan. To wrap up,
Yes.
let's get out of here. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at Numac is known, at Jordan Tresky, at Watch GSPN on TikTok and Instagram. Go follow those accounts to see the clips we have post. Share our stories if you would. Share our posts. We would really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Be sure to check out gspn.info for the link to the Discord, a link to all the other podcasts, Bucks, Brewers, and the Junk Drawer Pod. Make time for this. What's today? The 4th? Yesterday was the 4th. So Ty and Rohan had released an episode after the first play-in tournament game against who'd they play? The New York Knicks,
Yeah.
and won at Milwaukee, or in Milwaukee at Pfizer. And what was the other good Dame time game? So go check out Ty and Rohan's breakdown of that game. Cruising for a Bruising, still hanging out with the Craig Council news and some of their favorite Brewers moments of the season on that feed that came out on Friday. If you listen to it, go listen to it. Get all your Brewers news. And then if you still haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon, or you just want to have some fun with some Martin Scorsese films, go check out Make Time for This, where Adam and Andrew have ranked their top 10 all-time Martin Scorsese movies. So that is it, folks. Appreciate you listening. As always, we'll be back with you again on Thursday for a preview of the Steelers pod, or the Steelers game, my apologies, with another pod. Like I said, appreciate you all listening, and thank you, Jordan, for talking Packers with me.
Thank you.